Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by ASIO Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, hello, folks. Welcome to the Chasing Giants podcast, brought to you by ASIO Gear, episode 310. It is February 1st when this episode uploads, Don. The winter is flying by. We got a lot to talk about this week, but we're going to hammer home the first segment, talking about weather. You've been out in it. Snowmageddon came through last week, and I just want to dive in all aspects, weather, what's going on with those deer right now, stress, sheds. I'm going to let you run with it, buddy.
Yeah, this last weather front that came through and dumped all that snow was really interesting because this week I was in northern Missouri and Iowa. And when I was in central Iowa, there was no snow on the ground whatsoever. And the morning that I left home and went that direction, it was minus 4 degrees. And I left in the middle of the night. And when I got to where I was going in northern Missouri, it was 20 degrees, so 24-degree difference going north. I wasn't going south, I was going north, and the temperature rose 24 degrees. And the farther north I got, there was very little snow on the ground. In fact, no snow whatsoever in parts of central Iowa. Even when I got as far north as Springfield, Illinois, Springfield had probably a quarter the snow that we had. And my travels have not taken me south this week. I guess it was a good thing I was going north because it was warmer and less snow, but that's pretty strange. You just don't see that very often.
Yeah, we were trying to race home from Texas to get ahead of it because a big portion of Texas was hit by the cold and the ice storm. Oklahoma, Arkansas, I guess we were about 4 to 6 hours ahead of the storm. It worked out that we all tagged out early enough we could leave a day early. But man, I saw on Facebook that a lot of the ranches that manage herds, and obviously the high fence exotics, there's so many of those in Texas, they had animals dying because they're just not used to those cold temperatures.
I saw that. Black buck antelope was one. I think axis deer maybe was another. They lost a lot of those down in Texas.
So, I mean, is that just because that species and where they live, those deer go into shock? They don't have the muscle mass or the fat build up to their body's made to withstand heat, not withstand cold, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing it was hypothermia that killed them. It was real interesting. Last week we was talking about the range of the whitetail and the various subspecies and how they can survive from the Keys of Florida and Mexico all the way up into northern Alberta and Saskatchewan. And yet some of these species are very adapted to a very specific climate, and that's the only place they will thrive or someplace similar to that. I think a weather event like this is just something that those animals are not geared to survive.
Well, you've seen that with your cattle, right? I mean, there's certain species. I know those cattle, I was telling you about them. They had big, I forget what breed you said it probably was, but they had big like donkey ears on them and a hump on the back. They said those cattle won't even come close to surviving up north.
Yeah, Brahmas. They do really well in a hot tropical region. And then you got the Scottish Highlands, with the long hair. They'll survive outdoors in the Arctic, really, basically. So a lot of difference there in the cattle breeds for sure also. But I guess those exotics, some of them just aren't built to take the cold.
So as we actually both pulled up Weather Underground. We got the next few weeks is still going to stay fairly cold, not bitter cold like it is, but fairly cold. What is the status of your food? Have you been down to your food plots to check out what's the status of food? Are you still going good with corn and soybeans, or have they been pounding them so hard that it's starting to see a difference?
Well, they've been pounding them. There's not much corn left. I got a food plot right in my backyard that it was a NutriCrave corn this year, and the other evening I looked out and there was 24 deer right there in the backyard feeding on that corn, and that was before dark. Last night I came in from Iowa. There was, I don't know, 8 or 10 deer right here around the house. As I turned and my headlights hit the yard. So they're coming up here to finish off that corn, I had 2 other corn plots, so this is the last one that gets consumed because it's right there in the yard, and a little bit too much human intrusion. But I'm sure I got plenty of soybeans left. Last time I'd looked, there was just tons of soybeans left. But this keeps on. They could run out, and I tell everybody, when you got a food plot program and you're trying to grow the biggest deer possible, you got to get them through. This is the time of the year when they are stressed the most. This is when quality food sources are in shortest supply. So, I always go out, say mid or late March, and see what I've got left in my plots. And if I've ran out of food, which I haven't for a few years, then that year I'm planting more acres. Not everyone has that option. They've got X number of acres that they can plant, but fortunately for me, I've got enough ground that I can plant more food if I need to. And this is a year that I just might have to plant more because I've got every deer in the neighborhood staying here. You've probably seen pictures on social media I posted of that, not albino, but that piebald doe.
Yeah.
It's got the white legs and white nose. Well, that's the deer that hasn't been here all year. She just recently showed up. And maybe I'll send you a picture you can throw on the screen for the viewers to see. But I've also had some new bucks show up here in the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure it's all about the food. So having these extra deer is really going to, stress my food sources.
Well, and I think with the snow on the ground, we're going to have an extended period of time with snow on the ground where ground browse is harder to come by. They have to dig down in it. So I think, this year has exposed how important corn and soybean crops are above just a cold, hard winter where they're still eating, plants on the ground. But right now, I mean, everything above that snow level, everything's eating it. The turkeys, I mean, it's all they got.
Yeah, I was on a property in Missouri this week, and it was a repeat visit to a client that had me a few years ago, and he had another property to show me. But while I was there, he wanted to show me the property I did before, and he had a patch of real world soybeans. There was a bunch, several acres. There had to have been somewhere between 10 and 15 acres of soybeans, and they had some pretty good snow cover there where he was at. And the deer trails coming into that soybean patch was just like spokes on a wheel. And you could just tell where the deer where they were entering that plot, there was not a soybean left on the stalk. But then when you would get in the areas, out in the middle of the plot or a direction where the deer weren't coming from, there was a whole lot more beans on those pods. But I wish I could have got a drone picture of that plot, because it would have been like spokes on a wagon wheel of the deer trails coming into that plot. But this is the time of the year when those deer need that food the most. And, this is a situation where, supplemental feeding could make a huge difference in these conditions. I think it's ridiculous that some states like Illinois do not allow supplemental feeding outside of season. And, the people that are going to do it outside of season are not guys that are just going to throw shelled corn down for the most part. They're going to be, feeding a complete feed with, all the nutrients that a deer needs. And it can mean a world of difference. And we got a question coming up about what's this weather going to mean for the bucks growing their antlers this coming summer. And we'll get into that when we answer that question. But, we're 1st of February. We're still a long way from this winter being over. We could have at least 6 more weeks of, tough conditions for these deer.
When I was in Texas, one of the big protein sources that they fed to their deer was cottonseed.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever messed around with that?
Cottonseed is the
fairly
triple
cheap.
Yeah, it's real cheap, and it's called triple 20 because it's 20% protein, 20% fiber, and 20% fat. And it makes a great deer feed. They use it in a lot of pelleted deer feeds because that fiber, that cotton fiber in that with that seed, helps bind that pellet together and holds up and makes a really nice pellet. And the deer love it too. That high fat level, 20% fat, is probably the reason for it. But yeah, they love that stuff.
Have you ever tried feeding it to your captive deer when you had it in a straight form? I just wonder if it's just a southern thing or whether they'd eat it up here.
Well, I looked into it. I was going to include it in the diet. There's a couple of issues. Well, first, getting it here, it's just expensive to ship it in. And, it's a byproduct, so it's usually fairly cheap. But when you add the shipping cost to it, it's just kind of cost prohibitive. We live in soybean country, and we
That's
can
the
get
cheaper
that protein
problem.
from the soybeans, and the soybeans are double the rate of protein anyway. So the other thing is that cotton seed, it's actually got like cotton stuck to it, and it doesn't mix real well sometimes when you're trying to mix it in a feed ration.
The way the guys down in Texas would feed it is they would just set the pallet or the super sack out in the field, cut the top of it off, and the deer would basically eat off the top of the super sack. And then when it got eaten down, they go out and cut another layer or another section down out of it. I know they do make some, they almost look like a bale feeder
Yep,
that you put it in the top and they eat through the wire and pull it out.
exactly.
But yeah, it's definitely a different type program than what we have up here.
Yep. I've seen those feeders that they put it in. Yeah, it's like a round wire cage that holds that pile together, really, I guess. And the deer stick their noses between the wires and eat
Yep.
it.
All right, well, we're going to take a break from ASIO Spot. We're going to come back. I want to go over our live appearances real quick. I got some announcements about the Midwest Sportsman's Classic presented by FAE. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I know a lot of our listeners are coming, so I want to go over some schedule updates that we have for that, and then talk a little bit about the Texas hunt video that we just released before the Higgins Hot Seat segment. So we'll be right back.
ASIO Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. ASIO has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 five-star reviews. Visit ASIOgear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
Well, thanks to ASIO for everything. Make sure you check out the Mission Whitetail podcast and also the new Bobby Worthington training. It's a virtual training that you can take online. Head up over to ASIO.com to learn more about those things. Don, I just put a slide up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Why don't we go through the few bullet points of where we're going to be live here within the next month or so?
Yeah, February 17th, I'm going to be in Vermontville, Michigan with Mike Mitchell of Mike's Mighty Micros. Either two or three, I don't remember now, how many of our real world dealers are going together to put on this event. The phone number is 517-726-1600. The dates that you see have been changed. I just got notice right before we started recording that you need to move those up 30 minutes. So dinner will start at 4:30. Seminars will start at 6 p.m. Then February 19th, 20th, 21st, Terry and I will be at the Midwest Sportsman's Classic in Shipshewana, Indiana. Call 574-354-6030 for more information. February 25th and 26th, the Whitetail Management Conference and Real World Dealer event in Arthur, Illinois. We need you to RSVP for that so that we can plan for food. You can call James Hayden, who's our sales manager, 574-870-7937. That event is for real world dealers and their guests. So if you got interest in being a dealer, this would be a great time to come and learn more about us and pick up your first order, save some shipping. And then March 19th, I'm going to be at Shelbina, Missouri, at the Shelbina Christian Church, doing a sermon/seminar at that event. Don't have a phone number yet. As soon as we have that, we'll share that with you.
Yep. And Wes Delks, make sure you follow Real World on our website, Real World's website. You can actually go to speaking engagements. Wes has 2 up and coming seminars that he's doing. So we try to keep all of that updated as best we can. But again, social media, our newsletters, direct email blasts, and we'll try to keep everybody informed as much as possible. Let's switch gears and talk about the Midwest Sportsman's Classic presented by FAE. Man, a lot of the final details are coming together really quick. You know, I know we're wanting to talk about deer hunting, but there's so many of our listeners that attend this show and a lot of our Amish. We hope that a few announcements will really help you guys plan your trip. The show is February 19th, 20th, and 21st. But remember, show hours, it starts from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock on the 9th. It's a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the 20th and an 8 to 4 on the 21st. So to give you guys a couple little preview segments, Chasing Giants is going to have a huge booth right when you first come into the show hall. And Don, you're going to have your 4 200-inch bucks on display there. I think that's the first time you've really ever displayed those deer, and you got your Doubting Thomas buck going to be back in time that you're going to have it at the show. People can stop by, see him, and take pictures and whatever they want to do.
Yep, we'll be there in an expanded booth. Got a lot of exciting things to announce at that show, new partnerships, new product.
Yeah.
I'm going to release that video. Just a whole lot of things going on. I think Terry and I are going to be on the stage about twice a day. Are we doing we're doing a live podcast the first night, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple main feature events. So on Thursday night, we're doing a live podcast, and this is going to be different than any other one that we've done before. We got we're gonna pass out like prizes and gifts from our partners. Some of our partners are sending us a bunch of freebies, so we'll be throwing stuff out to the fans. Obviously, if people come up and ask live questions and want to put Don on the spot, we'll give you something if you do that. And then there'll be some other just kind of prizes and giveaways through that show on Thursday night, the live Chasing Giants podcast. Friday night will not have as much engagement with the crowd, but right between Brent Henderson talking, our buddy Brent's going to be there doing a seminar in the afternoon. We go right after him. We're going to be debuting the Doubting Thomas video, which is in the final stages of post-production right now. Looks really good. That's going to be probably, I would say, when it finally finishes up, about a 30, 35-minute, somewhere in there video. We're going to play on the big screen. And then you and Al Foster are actually going to talk more about the story with all of us on stage. So that'll be an exciting thing. For all you fishermen, later that night, the late night event is called Friday Night Bites with a B, and that's going to be two of the biggest fishing personalities in the industry, Mark Zona and Kevin Van Dam, who's probably the most famous bass fisherman of all time. I know Steve Shields is all giddy about it. You know, he's such a big fisherman. He's all excited about having those guys. So Friday's going to be a huge one. But the other thing to remember is there's a seminar breakout in the middle of the days, and I'm not sure off the top of my head what time it is. It's like just after lunch. You and I did a special project with the presenting sponsor FAE this year, to where we did a habitat project on our farm, and people are going to be able to come to that episode or that session and see truly behind the scenes of how we did a big habitat project on our farms. And we're going to walk you through the whole thing. So it's going to be a kind of opening the curtain to what's been behind in our sanctuaries, right?
Yeah. So we got some great video footage of that and lots of habitat talk. If you've got a property that you're working on, trying to improve it for deer, you don't want to miss that event.
Yeah. I think it's just going to give people a lot of ideas for different things and then tools to use it. We thank FAE for helping us with the project, obviously. But yeah, I think it's for anyone that's working on a habitat project, you're going to want to see this, because this has everything to do with identifying bedding, funneling, where food sources access. You're going to get a lot of information in that session. So obviously there's a bait contest. There's an art contest. Chasing Giants is sponsoring a trail camera picture contest. So there's multiple categories and a bunch of big prizes. The grand prize is a $500 prize pack to ASIO. You'll be able to go to the ASIO booth and literally pick out what you want. And then we're giving away Wise Eye cameras for the other categories. So these are big prizes. There's no cost to enter. What you have to do is show up with your trail camera picture. And I think there's the 3 categories are like the prettiest landscape. You know, it'd be like something you'd want to frame and put in an office. Just a really, you know, cool looking picture of a scene. The other one's a cool buck video or a cool buck photo. And then the third one is obscure photos. So all of your king buck pictures. I had a trail camera picture earlier this year where a group of does were running through and the camera was put on like a 4-round burst. So it captured them. And one of the does did a complete face plant. I mean, you could just see her, the first thing that hit her face down. So any of those kind of pictures, if you're one of those guys that has the naked dudes walking through public land, at least take a black Sharpie before you bring it in. It is a family event, but you guys who punt public land, you know what I'm talking about. I've seen a couple of those. So it's just so much going on. Go to Midwest Sportsman's Classic, MidwestSportsman'sClassic.com. All of the schedule, everything's on there. If you don't have access to the internet, I'm going to give you a number. You can call and get a phone tree with all the details. That number is 574-5460. Shifting gears a little bit, Don, you've been on the road so much you probably have not had a chance to watch the Texas hunt yet. That just got released yesterday. It's a little bit different type of a video. There's 2 kills on that episode with Austin and I. We did not put Joe's kill. He got it on video, but that's going to be used for another project at Shipshewana. The purpose of this video was to really show the accommodations, the farm, and what we're going to be doing in the future, very near future, for Lester's Feet fundraiser. So hopefully by Shipshewana, you people that are going to be there will get the preliminary news of how to win a hunt with Joe Miles, Don Higgins, myself, and I just got confirmation last night. Emerson Day is going to be joining us, and she'll do a private little concert around the campfire every night. So we're going to have a professional, a Christian music artist in camp with us, and just fellowship. The amount of time we just get around and get to, you know, enjoy each other is what I really like about this hunt. So stay tuned for that. We're still working on the final logistics with the permits and everything to do the raffle, and we'll update you as soon as we know. But yeah, go watch that video on Chasing Giants YouTube. It's about 20 minutes long, but has a lot of footage of what South Texas is like, the bucks that we saw. My goal with that video is to show every person that buys a raffle ticket what you're going to experience while you're down there. And the main goal is to raise a lot of money for Lester's Feet, right?
Yeah, good cause. So also might have some other fundraisers during the week or during that event for Lester's Feet.
Yep.
I think there's going to be an auction of at least a couple items. The young lady that did the drawing last year and won the art contest, I think that drawing is going to be auctioned off. One of the prettiest drawings I ever seen.
Yep.
Might have the subject.
Even with you in it, are you going to bid on it?
Absolutely, I'm going to bid on it. It ain't going to go cheap.
I want to know how many of our buddies are going to run it up if you're bidding. So you guys get your checkbooks out. It goes to a family in need. So yeah, but stay tuned to all that. We got a lot of great information. The booth at the Chasing Giants booth in Shipshewana is going to be right across from ASIO. We got a wider aisle, so it'll accommodate everybody. We want you to come and stop by and talk to us for a little while. We made our booth big to invite you guys in to spend more time with us this year. So come in, visit with us, take pictures of Don's bucks, look at what we got going. Chasing Giants is growing so fast, and we're just so blessed and hope that we can continue to do what we are, and that serve the serious whitetail hunter and land managers. Speaking of that, and you got anything else, or I'm going to put you on the Higgins hot seat with a question that might get you fired up, but it's a hunting question.
Oh, fire away. We had politics last week, and there's a lot of people liked it. I think there might have only been one. Was there one negative comment? There wasn't much. I think most people liked it.
I don't know. I stay so busy. I have trouble keeping up with them.
Well, the guy that complained, we gave him a full refund, so he's got nothing to complain about now.
Yep, he got all of his money back. So for the Higgins hot seat, brought to us by 360 Blinds, this week I'm going to talk about culling. And it seems like, I'm not trying to take credit for our show and the narrative that it basically creates as a trickle out across the industry, but it just seems like every time we say something, there's a bunch of discussion afterwards. And I think there's just so many people that criticize isn't the right word, but maybe just disagrees with some of the philosophy that you and Dr. Strickland basically put a theory together, not knowing the other one was doing it. And then we get to a certain point and we're like, it's the same plan, the same idea. But I think people misinterpret it because they think that the culling process is to make an immediate impact on the genetic structure of all your farm. And I just don't think people listen long enough to truly understand when you say, number one, I'm letting the oldest or the best bucks in each age class live. And number two, I'm playing probability and 8-pointers are the first ones out. I want you to go in and talk about that because I think if people really just stopped talking long enough to listen, it would make a whole lot more sense of what you and both Dr. Bronson Strickland have talked about.
Well, I think the disagreements that I see come from just about everything I say. It's not just the culling side. I know, I think it was Monday. I always have my cell phone on the charger right by the bed there. And usually in the morning, I grab that cell phone to look at trail camera pictures and whatever messages that come in overnight. And the other day, it was Monday, I had 2 people reach out to me to send me screenshots of other people bashing me on social media. One of them was about culling, and the other one was about deer bedding in switchgrass. And the ironic thing is that these attacks typically start with someone trying to be a consultant, and I guess they're trying to gain some kind of following or clients or whatever. But when it comes to culling, I guess I go way back. When I started managing my farm, I tried to save every buck on the farm. I wanted them all to get to 5-6 years old and all become mature bucks. And it just wasn't working. I would lose the best bucks in each age class. And, on a typical year on my farm, I'll have say 6 3-year-olds, give or take one or two. And I was trying to save them all. And when I was, every year, the top end buck on my farm would be about 150 inches. And then every 3 or 4 years, I'd get a bigger one, like maybe a 170. And then it'd be back to 3 or 4 years of 150s. And there would only be one of those 150s too. It wasn't like there was a bunch of them running around. Well, one day I'm sitting in my stand and I'm thinking, as a livestock farmer, I don't let every bull calf that's born on the place remain a bull. Some of them become steers. They don't all get to breed to cows. And yeah, the wild deer are different, but I can control that to some degree by shooting the ones that I don't want left to breed, the does in this case. So I started a program, I'm talking 20 some years ago, where I started shooting the worst bucks in each age class and started letting the best ones in each age class live. And what happened was I stopped losing them. The better bucks in each age class started staying around because they didn't have competition or as much competition. And I was never doing it to change the genetic structure of the herd. It was just to allow the better bucks to stay on the farm or encourage them to stay on the farm. Well, over time, I mean, it's been a slow process. We're talking 20 plus years, but it got to the point where I was having those 170s that were only here every 3 to 4 years. All of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but over time, they were here every year. So every year, the top end buck was a 170. And then on every few years, I'd get one even bigger, a 200, for example. And it just kept getting better. And it got to the point where I started having multiple 170-inch bucks on the farm every year, which is, where it's at today. So the whole culling process, it started, I start culling these bucks when they're 3 years old. And at 3 years old, if they've only got an 8-point rack, they're getting shot here. And I don't care who wants to argue with me about it and if it works or if it don't, because I know it does. I've seen it. over time, I had fewer and fewer of those bucks to call. And a good example was this year was the best year ever. So every single buck on my farm this year that was 3.5 and older had more than 8 points except for one. That cull buck that I shot and posted the picture of, and I'll send you another picture. You can post it here, Terry. That was the only buck on the farm that only had 8 points and was at least 3 years old. The rest of them had at least 9 or 10 points and had a lot of them with more points than that. Well, there's two arguments people want to throw out there. Well, they want to say, well, the doe contributes 50% of at least 50% of the genetics to that buck fawn. Well, you're right. But over time, those does on my farm had better sires, had better fathers with more, antler points and bigger antlers. So the does became better genetically over time. So that addresses that argument. There's just so much information. And it's like the other thing they want to throw out there is science has disproven that you can change the genetics in a wild herd. Well, what do you call the study that Dr. Strickland did? I mean, Dr. Strickland is a scientist, probably one of the most well-respected whitetail doctors in the country, and he's preaching the same thing that I'm preaching. So if you want to argue the science side of it, I can throw science right back at the argument and say, yeah, I got the top, whitetail doctor in the country on my side promoting the same thing. Here's the real rub on the whole argument. What I've been able to do on this property, I know without a doubt, is not going to happen on 99% of other deer properties, at least to the degree that I've been able to do it. So don't think that you can start doing what I'm saying and shooting every 3-year-old 8-point, and in 20 years you're going to have a magical farm that's producing 200s. The layout of my farm, I just don't have that many, the ingress and egress of other deer, new deer moving in and out. Yeah, it happens. But when one moves in and he doesn't have, strong antler genetics, he gets shot pretty quick before he has a chance to spread those genes too much. So I think it's misunderstood. I think a lot of people, I think there's two different groups that are arguing the point. I think one of those is well-meaning. I think they've followed what they've heard from other so-called biologists or whatever. And they've just kind of repeated that. But I think there's a group that's more malicious that are trying to make themselves out a little smarter and don't have the experience. So it works. It doesn't work on every property. It works to varying degrees. Some properties it don't work at all. Most properties it probably doesn't work at all. But you cannot tell me I am absolutely convinced. And here's the thing about it. I've been convinced for years, but I kept it to myself. I was afraid to throw it out there. It was too controversial. And I'm not one to steer from controversy anyway, but it was out there far enough that I just kind of kept it to myself, even though I was seeing the results. And finally, it was just undeniable. It's like, come on now. It produced Smoky at 206 inches, produced Mel at 221 inches, produced Doubting Thomas at 203 inches. Show me another farm with about 100 acres or less of deer cover that's produced 3 200-inch bucks in the last 8 years. I mean, and it's a farm that was producing nothing but top end 150s 20 years ago.
People would rather make other accusations instead of look at the science and the hard work that's been behind it. I think the other thing that people come at you, or not directly at you, but about the culling aspect is, well, that 8-pointer could do something special. And yeah, it could, but you're playing odds here, right? So yep. Could it? Yes, but any statistical analysis takes the probability. Think of deer hunting and managing your farm like Moneyball. Billy Bean proved with statistical data that your on-base percentage gives you more likely to score runs, which lets you win games, not necessarily high payroll players. I think that's a bad analogy of kind of what you're doing. And yes, there is a couple risks in this. I'll give people that come to Shipshewana that are going to watch the Doubting Thomas video are going to see unbelievable footage and crazy storytelling that goes back 6 years prior to this buck being shot. And I don't want to ruin the storyline of anything, but people also questioned why you let me shoot King David buck as a call buck at 4 that scored just under 170. Well, the problem with it was he was the number 3-4-year-old on the farm. And you had 2 bucks that were bigger than him, one of them being Doubting Thomas, which we got crazy amounts of footage of this deer through the year while I was hunting King David. So, but in this case, one of those 2 deer died. You know, he didn't make it through the season. We'll talk about that in the video. I'm not going to give any more details. So, yeah, the plan didn't work. Instead of you having the top 2 4-year-olds go to 5, you only had 1. And if I wouldn't have killed King David, this year you would have had King David as a 5-year-old with Doubting Thomas. And what could he have been? You don't know. But over a 20-year period of time, if you stay consistent with this, you're going to play the bell curve. You know, that center statistical pathway of let your 6'2" 6th graders that are trying out for the basketball team that might be clumsy, but you know they have a better potential to be something, live to that next age class versus being a 130-inch that pushes every 3-year-old 150 off to the neighbor to get shot.
Yeah, you know, last year at the Iowa Deer Classic, I presented a seminar on this topic. And at this year's Whitetail Management Conference in Arthur, I'm going to revisit that seminar. I'm going to update it with, you know, some new slides and such. That's going to be one of the seminars at that event. And I'm going to detail it with photos of bucks and things like that. It's real. Culling is absolutely works. I will stand, if I have to stand alone and argue this with the entire hunting industry, I will do it. It works. It absolutely works. And if someone don't believe it and they want to manage their property in a different way, that's fine. I don't care. But I'm telling you this, after I pass, if my son-in-law and my grandsons will continue to manage this property as I've done, they're going to be shooting 200-inch bucks as well. They're going to come along from time to time. I don't know if it's going to be every 3 years, every 5 years, every 10 years, but I guarantee you the last 200-inch buck has not been grown on this farm. And culling is the number one thing that I've done that's produced those bucks. I take my nutrition program to the max and my habitat management to the max. I take my sanctuary protection to the max, but it's the way that I've managed the bucks on this farm that's had a bigger impact than anything else I've done.
Yeah, and I guess my point for saying what I did is the excuses people make of why it doesn't work, it's not a flawless system. There are going to be deer that you kill that could have been great at 6 that weren't great at 3. But the probability of that is very small. So you're playing probability with letting the best bucks live. So,
yep, absolutely.
Interesting topic. Thanks to 360 Blinds for taking that segment. We're going to move on with Midwest Land Group and our listener submitted questions. We'll be right back.
Ever had a terrible real estate experience? Average realtors usually spend more time selling themselves than on selling your land. They'll tell you anything to get the listing. They know that if they get the listing, you're stuck with them. Not here. Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That means if we don't meet your expectations, you can fire us. That puts all the pressure on us to perform. We don't just list land, we sell it. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us. Visit us at MidwestLandGroup.com.
All right, the first question comes from John Helmick from Carmichael's, Pennsylvania. He says, Don and Terry, thank you for a great podcast and your continued use of your platform to spread the word of God and Jesus Christ. My question is regarding frost seeding. Last fall, I planted a 2-acre clover field with real-world clover. Due to the lack of rain, I had clover coming up, but it never took off like past plantings. Would I be better off to frost seed over what I have or to start from scratch this spring? If frost seeding is the better option, at what rate or number of seeds should I spread per acre? Also, at what point should I use the mighty micros and booster that you spoke about in an earlier episode last month? Keep up the great work with the podcast. The information you guys provide is greatly appreciated. Well, John, I know exactly what you're talking about. The same thing happened to my clover last year. So I used the pH drill, my G series drill, and I drilled some clover seed into established clover fire breaks because they were getting a little bit thin. I did it in the fall right ahead of a rain, and we got that rain, and that clover instantly germinated. You could look right down the rows that I drilled in and see that little clover coming up. But then the rain stopped. We got just enough rain to germinate that seed, and then it stopped, and all that clover died. That's one challenge of starting in the fall is you gotta, once it's germinated, you gotta keep it going with timely rains. On a normal year, it's not an issue at all, but last fall was so dry that, it just, that stuff came up and then it died. So you're at probably the start over point, just like I am. I'm gonna basically go in and drill mine again and do it as early in the spring as I can. You can frost seed, and I think you need to use the full rate, 10 pounds per acre, just because I don't think you're going to have much, if anything, from that original planting last fall. As far as the Mike's Mighty Micros and the pH balancer is what you were referring to. You want to get that pH balancer on as early as possible in the spring. I like to do it right ahead of a rain and let that rain wash it in. But on the micros, you need to let that clover get up a little bit, though. You need a fairly good stand so that that micros comes in contact with the leaf of that clover and the plant can absorb it. So I do the pH balancer very early, let the stuff come up. I'm probably talking like May, maybe early May. Then you can spray the micros on it. Do that about once a month.
Yep. After you cut.
Yep.
It'll give that clover basically a quick little boost after you nip the tops of your clover off. Okay.
Next one comes from Vince Peterson from Seymour, Nebraska. Says, hey guys, I appreciate the podcast and the times you dedicate to doing it. My question is for Don. If someone else kills one of the giants you have targeted, do you congratulate that person? And does this situation cause you to become discouraged and negative in any way? I had a situation last season where a buck I was after was killed by someone who I am certain killed it illegally, and I'm having a tough time dealing with it. Thanks. Well, Vince, typically, yeah, absolutely. If someone shoots a buck, I don't care if I'm after it or what, I always try to congratulate them. Even take it a step farther. If I happen to have shed antlers from that buck or trail camera pictures or whatever, I will gladly hand them over to the person that shot the buck. I think there's plenty of local hunters that can attest that I've gave them either trail cam pictures or shed antlers of bucks they've shot. I can kind of relate to your situation a little bit because there's a few years ago, I think some of the longtime listeners will remember I was after a public land buck and I had a real issue with the person that ended up shooting that deer. And the reason for it was he basically was trying to cause me some problems. I showed him total respect 3 different times. I went to put trail cameras up at locations and then found cameras already there and totally vacated the area out of respect for the person who I didn't even know who it was. But they were all the same cameras, same brand, all brand new. None of them were locked to the trees, just strap only. Showed that other hunter total respect, vacated areas that he was at first. He discovers that I'm in the area, and he did everything he could to sabotage my hunt, including stealing my tree stand. He ends up shooting that buck on I think it was the 2nd or 3rd day of the season. I later learned several things about that person and their hunting tactics from people who have been to the woods with the guy. And I'm convinced that he did not kill that buck legally. He did have a conservation officer come in and inspect the kill site, but It's easy to bring someone in after the fact and say this is what happened, whether it happened that way or not. There's just too many things that did not add up with that. The reason I tell this story is that is the only person that I could never bring myself to congratulate after he shot a buck that I was after. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he did everything right, but there's just too many things about the guy that have me convinced that that's not the case. But I think that too many friendships have been ruined over big deer. If another person, I don't care who it is, it could even be someone I really don't even care for, but if they shot a buck and they did it right, hats off to them, good for them. If it's done legally and ethically, I don't have a problem whatsoever. And I'm sincere when I do congratulate them.
I want to say something about the public land people. We get accused of hating on public land and the guys who hunt. And I think it's crazy because it's the furthest from the truth of anything. The amount of respect I have for people that put up with the public land crap that they do, I tip my hat to you. With what we're trying to do, man, it's just, I don't think I could tolerate it myself. But for the guys who out there, busting their tail, working on public land, dealing with people doing stupid stuff to their hunting spots. And man, I tip my hat to you. I just hope people understand we're not bashing public land by any means. We're basically just saying we're so anal about everything. It's really, really hard for us to, you'll go try it, but man, you get frustrated quick too. You drove all the way, 9 hours one time and turned around and came home.
I did. That was just last fall. Drove clear out of state 9 hours, and I could see that it was very obvious right out of the gate that for me to sit there would be a waste of my time. I just been around the block enough that I know an opportunity and I know, a waste of time, and that was a waste of time. But yeah, one of my goals has been to kill a giant on public land, and the toughest part is finding a giant on public land. When you do find one, and then you got to run into, some idiot that steals your tree stand, calls the CPO, the conservation officer, and makes false accusations against you. I just don't get it.
I think that's what Lee Mitchell's topic in Shipshewana for his seminar is about public land, though, right?
It is, yeah. And I'll tell you what, Lee is one of the best public land hunters you will ever talk to or meet. That guy he knows a lot about whitetails, and he gets it done on some very tough places. The guy has been successful in hunting whitetails in Georgia. He manages a ranch in Texas. He's hunted in Kansas and Iowa, Illinois. And I don't know that he's ever, besides his Texas ranch, I think most of his hunting has been on public land.
All right. Well, there's another plug for the Shipshewana show. So come out and see us.
Yep. Next question comes from David from Des Moines, Iowa. Says, Don, it seems like a lot of bucks shed early this year. Does this mean they have a longer growing season to add inches, or do they just finish growing earlier, resulting in no additional growth? How does that whole process work? Well, they don't really necessarily start growing earlier. What'll happen is a lot of times it's got a lot more to do with the spring weather. And that's why I like to see an early spring. If we get some warm days in the spring, then that's going to start that antler growth cycle and get it off to a better start. It's going to wrap up, about the same time, towards the end of summer every year. But if you're going to gain days, it's going to be on that front end with the, a really warm and early spring. I've got a buck, the turning point buck that I was first after last year before I decided not to shoot him. He shed. He shed the one antler back in December, and he carried the second one for like 5 weeks. And he finally, in the past week, he shed that second side. He's not going to start growing his rack now. All the other bucks on the farm still have both sides that I know of. So he's not going to get a jump on all those other bucks. They're all going to shed, and they're all going to start regrowing about the same time. And regrowth start is going to be based largely on the weather. It's also some daylight hours, but when you get those bright sunny days, warm temperatures in the spring, that's what gets that cycle really started.
Okay. For all you Illinois residents, get your ears perked in and lean in. This is going to be a good one for you.
This one comes from Carl Compton from Findlay, Illinois. He says, Don and Terry, thanks for taking my question. Don, do you think if elected, Darren Bailey could change Illinois to make it a good deer state again? God bless. Carl, yeah, I'm getting on my soapbox here a little bit. Darren Bailey is one of the Republican candidates for governor. He's a guy that very conservative, Christian values. He's a farmer, Southern Illinois farmer. He's actually going to be a guest on our podcast. He's agreed to come on, and I'm going to ask him some questions and give him a chance to tell you what he stands for. But if Darren Bailey gets elected, I believe that he will try to help us deer hunters. I think that he's a deer hunter himself, but I don't think he's super serious like a lot of us. And I think that we could open his eyes to some things. But by himself, just him being elected is not going to change much. It's going to require the legislature to help him. It's going to require a DNR that he's probably going to have to appoint a director that's really informed about whitetail management. He's going to have to get the Farm Bureau on his side to promote the agenda as well. So I think having Darren Bailey in our corner is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. I don't know the other candidates on the Republican side. I know the Democrat J.B. Pritzker is basically a communist, and we're going to get nothing out of him except another tax and probably another purple-haired freak leading DNR. Just an absolute joke, a pathetic human being, and how he ever got elected is just, it's unbelievable. I don't know. Kind of like Tim Walz up in Minnesota. Who elects these freaks? Back to Darren Bailey, sorry. I think he's a huge key to us getting some positive changes for the Illinois deer herd, but he can't do it on his own. And also, it kind of starts with us. It really doesn't start with Darren. I need to take that back. It really starts with us, because I see figures where 80% of hunters don't even vote. 80% of hunters don't even vote. And that's unacceptable. Guys, if we want to change this state, we got to get out and vote. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the deer hunting side or what our issue is. If we're not going to vote, we don't have a leg to stand on. We can't complain. So I just encourage you guys to come back, and when we have Darren on, listen to what he's got to say. I have no idea what he's going to say, really. I'm going to pose some pretty pointed questions and measure every word. And I'm sure he's going to be non-committal, as a smart politician is. But the thing I like about Darren is he's a Christian guy. He's from the country. He's a farmer. He understands rural values. He understands the culture, the outdoor culture. And I think if we can get him elected, I think he will do his best to improve the Illinois deer herd for us.
Well, I think what we can do is, especially for all you Illinois residents, you guys can submit a question on chasinggiants.com. And we're not going to promise we're going to read those questions to him on the show, but it might create some good talking points that we can see everybody's perspective. So if you have a question specific to this episode, we have not scheduled it yet. We got to get a lot of our schedules aligned to do this, but it'll happen soon. Submit a question at chasinggiants.com, and we'll filter through those and pick which ones we can have a narrative on. But yeah, give us some ideas about some concerns or specific questions that you have, especially if you're an Illinois resident. Just put on the top Illinois or something that we know it's for that episode.
Next question comes from Jason Boehm from Shelbyville, Illinois. He says, hello, Don and Terry. My question is about woody vegetation management in CRP plantings and switchgrass fields. I have 15 acres in a bottom that has been planted in a CRP program for the last 8 years. It is still a good stand, but there are some spots that are thin from staying wet from heavy rains or the creek getting out in the past. In these spots, I've been fighting cottonwood starts and other woody vegetation. I divided the field roughly in half and have been alternating burns the last 5 years. The spots that have woody vegetation after burning, I chop down with a brush hog. but they still come back every year. I only have a couple years left on the contract, so should I start from fresh with a new planting then? Or do you have any other recommendations to keep the trees from taking over and keeping the current stand going for years to come? Jason, yeah, so as your CRP contract expires, you may be required, if you're re-enrolling in CRP, you may be required to replant that. And that's probably the only way outside of spraying every stump that you're going to get those under control. So in the future, cottonwoods grow so fast that they are hard to control. Typically, if you're burning a CRP field, switchgrass field, whatever, if you're burning it about every 3 years, that fire is going to get hot enough that you're going to kill those young trees. So a couple things you can do. One is burn later in the year. Allow that tree the buds to break, so you got that sap flow coming up into the tree from the roots. If you burn too early, you might kill the top of that tree, but that root system is still alive, and then when it comes out of dormancy, it just shoots up new growth. And even if it starts it has to start a whole new stem, down at the base, it can do that with that root system. So allow that sap flow to be coming up the tree to bud. The other thing, with cottonwoods growing so fast, they get such a diameter in a hurry that you need to burn more frequently. So like an every year burn instead of every other year. That every year is not going to harm those grasses whatsoever. Even a third thing you can do is, I don't know what your mix is, CRP mix, but if you have more fuel for that fire, some bigger grasses, some big switchgrass, there's various varieties of switchgrass, but you got like real world switchgrass, that stuff burns and you got a fire. You got some heat. And what that fire does is it boils the cambium layer. The cambium layer in a tree is that layer between the bark and the wood. And that's where the cells are moving energy and nutrients up and down that tree, from the roots up and vice versa. So you get a hot fire and you boil that cambium layer and it can kill that tree. But if the roots are still alive, that tree will just shoot up new growth. So that's the three things I would do. Have a different mix of grasses where you got more fuel, burn more often, and burn later in the year after that tree's come out of dormancy.
Great advice. All right, let's this will be probably one word answers from both of us, so let's get one more in to close out the show.
This one comes from Eric Sackett from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Says, Don and Terry, what is one thing on or around your farms or leases that you want to change but can't? Well, the thing that I want to change, Eric, is I want to own more land around me. So I can't do that because I don't have enough money.
Kind of similar, but my one word answer is neighbors. It's the same principle, though.
I'm blessed with good neighbors. I can't complain about my neighbors whatsoever.
Yep.
But I would like to own more land.
Yep, I think we all would. They're not making any more of it, right?
Yep.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning into episode 310. I think the culling discussion was pretty interesting. Obviously, the cold weather. Some parts of the country have more snow coming back in. Say a prayer for all of those people down south in Louisiana, Mississippi that have gone, 5-6 days without power. Pretty catastrophic for those people down there. So, and then obviously all the linemen, utility workers, road people that's been out putting, all these extra hours of overtime trying to take care of folks. Be kind to them. I know it's not fast enough as what you want, but these guys are out risking their lives to help you. So say a prayer for those guys. And this next week, Dad will do his third disciple in the Disciple Apostle series on Chasing Assurance. Encourage you to go watch that. We're getting up to almost like 4,000 views a week on that show. So it's pretty crazy that people are using it for their small groups and Bible studies and devotions every Wednesday morning. So we appreciate the support with that and the people that help us put it out. Other than that, Don, another week of consulting in cold weather.
Yeah, it's going to be cold, and I'm going to stay close to home this week. So sleep in my own bed every night. So, hope to see you guys at some of these events that we talked about. God bless. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by ASIO Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Hey, Chasing Giants listeners, Aaron Gaines with Sunday Night Prayer Time. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And a couple weeks ago, I'm sitting in church during communion meditation, and I started thinking about how often I carry the same prayers over that I had the week before. You know, I'm going to God asking for help with certain sins, help with patience, help with self-control, help with forgiving others, and also the strength to resist the same sins. And, sitting there doing some self-reflection, it was kind of discouraging to realize how little seems to have changed week to week. And, in that moment, it was easy to start to wonder, if I failed God in some way, or if my prayers even matter anymore. But sitting there thinking about communion and, God sending his son to die on the cross for our sins was a reminder that our hope has never been in how well we're doing. It has always been in what Christ has done. Jesus knew how often, we would fall, when he gave his body and his blood on that cross. And he knew that we would need his grace again and again. And still, he invites us to believe in him and have eternal life with him if we choose to do so. Not because we've overcome sin, but because we all need a Savior. And so as you go into, this next week, and you go to prayer, asking God for help with sin, just come to him honestly. Admit your weaknesses and admit your slow growth, but also trust that God is still working in us. Sometimes we may not, see it or feel it, but his mercy has not run out, and his grace is still enough. Let's go to him in prayer. Dear Lord, just give thanks to you for all the blessings you give to us, and just thank you for sending your son to die on the cross for our sins so we can have eternal life with you. Certainly, we're weak, right? We need you, and our growth is slow, but we also need to be reminded that through your grace we have salvation, and that's what we need. And we just pray for those that have not accepted you as their personal Savior, and hopefully for those of us that have, we can be a light to others and also grow closer to you. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Everybody have a good week. God bless.